For those of you that don't know, Stasia is not here, so I had a crash course on how to do the intro. She will be here in about 30 minutes. She's like, I've got the outro. This is how you do the intro. So we did it. Woo! I'm so excited. So we have the lovely Karena back with us today. Super excited. We are going to be talking about Intro to Tarot. So we're going to talk about our tarot journeys, how we got into reading tarot, some of our favorite decks, some of our favorite cards, that kind of thing. Like I said, Stasia will be here in about half an hour. And we are going to do the questions at the end. That way we can kind of have like this really cool exchange. And so if you've got any questions or whatever, type question in front of it. I will try to pin it. We're going to see, you guys, we're going to see just how good Stasia makes me look. She does a great job. Because I have nothing to do with the intros, the outros, the thumbnails, the pinning of the comments, any of that. I show up last minute and I'm like, I'm here. We go. So anyway, I know, it's great, right? So Karena, for everybody who might be new, tell us where we can find you and follow you on YouTube or wherever you are at in this amazing universe.
In this amazing online universe. Absolutely. So I have a website, magicofthemoonastrology.com. You can go there. I have some blog posts. There's also information about the types of readings I offer. For Cancer season, I'm also offering a $20 discount on readings if you put in Cancer 2024, if you want to book a reading. And then I'm also on YouTube at Magic of the Moon Astrology as well.
Yes, awesome. And you guys, if you have never had a tarot reading before, I highly recommend one with Karena. She is an amazing reader. We also are in the Psychic Animist Facebook group together where we take turns doing tarot lives. And this Saturday is my turn. So if you have not joined that group and that sounds like something you would like to do, let us know. So Karena, how did you fall in love with, well, first let's start with, let's maybe explain a little bit about what tarot is. I think most people probably know, but let's start there before we start how we came to this. So tarot is a way, it's a divination tool. Wally says, I'm here tonight at the risk of my eternal soul. We won't tell if you don't. How's that? Mum's the word. Tarot is an amazing tool of divination that tells a story. And there are two different sets of cards. There's major arcana and the minor arcana. The major arcana are those really big moments in life that are going to transform and change who you are. They're kind of inescapable, but you do get to manage how those energies kind of play out for you. Then you have the minor arcana, and those are comprised of 4 suits, and you've got air, fire, water, and swords, which are in line with the astrology signs. So air is represented by swords, fire is represented by wands, the water signs are represented by cups, and what I forget? Oh, pentacles. Pentacles are represented by the earth signs. And within that, so you don't typically ask tarot yes, no questions. It likes to give you the whole story of what's going on. So it's really good for really delving into a situation that you are looking for a deeper understanding of. Ben, I do not know where the term arcana came from. Do you know?
I think it's actually the opposite. I think like the word arcane or the term arcana that kind of means hidden esoteric type knowledge.
Oh,
That term already existed and was pulled into use in tarot, because the idea is that you're looking at a card and it has a meaning, but it's not clearly written out. You kind of have to know how to
yeah.
interpret all of the symbology of the card. So there's kind of an arcane, mysterious element to it.
Oh, and that's a great question because I didn't know any of that. So, Karina, what did you want to add to that? Because I know that I probably left a few things out there. So, what would you like to add that I probably
I think you
missed?
did a great introduction. I think maybe the only thing I would add is, as you mentioned, tarot is a divination tool. It's not the
Mhm.
right tool for answering every question. Like you mentioned, it's not good for yes and no questions. Um, I also find it's not very good with long time scale kind of questions.
Mhm.
Something like astrology is a better tool for that, because some of
Mhm.
those questions, for example, one really common question that I get asked as a tarot reader is, am I going to meet my life partner?
Right.
And that's such a tricky thing to answer over a long
Mhm.
time scale, because you may meet a life partner and you may spend some amount of your life with that partner, but it might not be your forever partner, and so it's almost like,
Yes.
without clarifying really strongly timeline,
Mhm.
um, the, you know, different parts of our life look very different at different points in time. And because the tarot is such an image based divination tool, it's good at answering what things will look like. What will my life look like next month? What will my job look like? Or if I take this new job, what will that
Mhm.
energy look like? But yeah, when you lengthen those time scales, it's almost like we're all going to have some good jobs and some not fun jobs, and some good partnerships and some not good partnerships. So it's really good at, defined timeline, like
Mhm.
this present moment, next month, maybe even general overview energy for like the next year. But if you're trying to answer questions about the whole course of your life, too long a time frame for tarot.
Right, right. That's a good point. And one thing too, I don't read for these things, but I don't ever read for like health. Do I have
Mhm.
cancer? Am I going to get pregnant? Am I going to have a child? Um, I'm not a doctor, so I don't have those answers. I don't read for death, like is somebody going to die? How am I going to die? Again, I don't have those answers. Um, am I going to get a windfall of money, or how should I invest my money? Those are other things that I don't read for, just
Mhm.
because, I'm not an expert in those areas, right? And the
Mhm.
energy is always changing. And one thing that I like to tell people and encourage, because there are some cards that, like there are cards in the deck, I don't want to say that I don't like, but that really kind of give me pause. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, boy, okay. And, if you get those cards, it's not doom and gloom. You can make better
Mhm.
life choices. You can look at a situation, you can evaluate it, and you can really see how that process can work. And so I again want to say that this is not set in stone, right? This is if the energy continues on this trajectory, this is how this is going to go. What is this? I don't. Okay. In the last week, I do 3 card spread each day. Every day, I pull 2 major arcana in first and second card. In a couple of days, it's been all 3 cards. I'm not sure what this means. Okay, Tony, what I'm going to
Mhm.
do, I'm going to star this, possibly, hopefully. Here we go. Haha, I got it started. Okay. And what we're going to do, Tony, is thank you for putting question in front of that. We will get to that at the end. And it could be that through the course of our discussion, that question might get answered for you just naturally. So keep the questions coming. I will do my very best to keep up with them. So let's start with Karina. How did you get into tarot? And what has that journey kind of looked like for you over this period of time? And how long have you been reading?
Yes. Yes. I think it's officially reading for probably 8 or 9 years now. And I thought it was going to be such a fun discussion when you first broached this topic with me of kind of let's talk about how we got into tarot, because I do find that people have such interesting entry points to
Yeah.
tarot. And
Hmm.
it's almost like it's sort of a magical, mysterious divination tool, and people
Hmm.
kind of wander upon it in different ways. So
Yes.
for me, I already knew astrology,
Hmm.
and I have a good friend who lives in the area, and he manages a restaurant and bar. And he was planning this big, fun, crazy Halloween party. And, at this restaurant bar, and he said, "Oh, yeah, can you just come and read tarot because you do astrology? That's all the same thing, right?" And I was like, "No." I had seen some tarot cards in the past,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
looked cool and gorgeous. And I'd looked
Yeah.
at other people's tarot decks because the imagery on these decks, people are so artistic and creative. It's just beautiful. So I was
Yes. Yes.
intrigued, but it always looked mysterious, and I hadn't done anything with it.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I was like, no, those aren't the same at all. But that kept rolling around in my brain where I was
Hmm.
like, I've been interested. I thought it looked really cool. The party was 3 months off. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
can I learn tarot interpretation before that party? And I started delving into tarot, and I discovered a couple of things. First of all, he gave me this tarot deck that he had bought on a Kickstarter. It's really gorgeous, but definitely like I could see why he wanted it for a Halloween party. It's called the Marigold deck. All of the
Uh-huh.
cards are black. They have gold edging. The imagery is skeletons doing things, and they're gorgeously put together, like just beautiful, beautiful imagery. Um,
Mm.
and, so I was kind of working with this new deck I'd never seen before and learning about tarot. And as I explored tarot, I kind of took two approaches. One, I was intuitively working with the cards and just really immersing myself in the images. What does this make me think of?
Right.
What am I feeling as I see these seven swords on this card? Um, and then also, I was starting to read up what do these cards mean, and I realized there were really, really strong astrological correspondences. And going, way back to kind of Order of the Golden Dawn, and when some of the classic decks like the Rider-Waite-Smith or the Thoth deck
Hmm.
were created, those people knew astrology very deeply, and a lot of that symbolism as well as other Kabbalistic symbolism went into the cards. And I was like, I maybe I do know more about this than I thought I did. Um,
Right.
and so, yeah, I just between working with the cards intuitively and
Hmm.
getting learning how to lower my mind, my logical processes to just, what do I feel from the card?
Right.
And then
Right.
also kind of bringing in the astrological correlations. It just felt like a light bulb went on in this really beautiful way. Um, and I heard later that there's
Hmm.
sort of this myth, or I don't know, legend, that you're supposed to be gifted your first tarot deck,
Yes.
which I did not know about, but I was gifted my first tarot deck. And I
That's
did wind up
awesome.
reading for that party. And it was honestly, it was a deeply, um, almost like a spiritual experience. I
Mhm.
expected it to be like Halloween party. People are going to be asking about fun. Everybody's showing up in costume. It's, you
Yes.
know, um, but people came. It was almost like just, again, the stars aligned in some astrological way. And people were asking questions like, what can I do to help bring about world peace? They were asking questions like that. And I was like, this is incredible, and it felt like such
Oh,
an honor
wow.
to be, you know, facilitating a connection to the universe with these
Yes.
dear, amazing souls. So yeah,
Right.
that was sort of my entry into tarot.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love that, like, your first questions were so profound and, like, really let you kind of dig into it. Oh my goodness, that is beautiful. Now, did you grow up around tarot and spiritualism, or did you kind of come to it on your own? Like, how did that look for you?
Yeah. I did not grow up with it. I grew up in a super
Mhm.
religious background, so kinda like
Uh-huh.
Wally's talking about, don't
Uh-huh.
risk your
Uh-huh.
soul.
Right.
Very much that kind of energy. And I
Right.
was
Uh-huh.
still always intrigued, but it felt
Mhm.
very taboo. But, in that way that taboo things are also quite interesting. We all are a
Uh-huh.
little
Uh-huh.
interested in the taboo.
Right. You're like,
So
let me
then
at it.
That's right. And, I realized early on, that images meant
Mhm.
things and there was
Yeah.
power to images. And even
Yeah.
the act of, taking something that's in our brains and drawing that on paper,
Mhm.
like I
Mhm.
felt that there was a power in that. There was a power in kind
Yeah.
of creating this image of a thing. And so I was intrigued. I had friends over the years who were
Mhm.
interested and who had decks. And so we
Mhm.
would draw cards sometimes, but nobody really knew what they were doing. So it was just like, ooh, this card has a knight on a white horse. So maybe you're going to get rescued from your problem. It was very, very basic early days.
Right. And you guys, you have to forgive me. I'm sorry. My allergies are kicking up here in Kansas. Oh, so yeah. Uh, wow, that is a beautiful. I love that story. I love that I know that to you or know that about you. And I feel like we even have a deeper connection because I too was raised in a very religious household.
Mm,
And this was very taboo. As a matter of fact, it's only recently that I started being a lot more open about my spiritual beliefs because I do truly believe that probably if some of my family knew what I believed, that I might not have a choice. Disconnection might be something that just might come my
yeah.
way. But in order to be who I am and to live authentically, I'm sharing more and more about my beliefs. So for
Mm,
me, my tarot journey, I grew up in a very, very religious household. This was considered witchcraft. We're just going to call it what they considered it.
mhm,
And this was like
mhm.
a bad thing. And, we were preached at and taught this is very, very bad. Like you said, it's taboo. Don't touch it. Like if you touch the deck, you're going to summon something. And this is going to be not necessarily a good thing. And let's see, hold on here. Okay, and so I was very afraid. And
Mhm.
when I had my spiritual experience, and if you've not heard that story, go back and catch the interview that Stasia and Carol did. I go into it in detail there. Um, but I picked up some. I picked up some oracle cards. A friend of mine took me to a metaphysical store in Fort Collins. I call it a hippie shop. We went into the hippie shop and she let me pick out some things. So I got a couple of crystals, I got an oracle deck, and then I got a book. And I started trying to read with the oracle deck, and I was pretty good at intuitively reading that. But it didn't feel right. It didn't give me the answers I was looking for. There wasn't that depth to it that I was looking for. And the
Mhm.
energies that I really like to work with are very old energies. I love the ancestral energies. I love the ancient energies, like the ascended masters and all of that. Like I tap into all of that when I read. And
Mhm.
the oracle cards weren't doing it. And so I got in touch with my friend, the same lady that had gifted me the oracle deck, and I said, I need a tarot deck, but it kind of scares me. And
Mhm.
I don't know what this is going to be. So could you pick up the fairy tarot deck for me? Because I thought fairy energy was going to be a little better. And if you
Mhm.
know fairy and fae energy, I mean, it's a little touch and go sometimes. They can be a little ornery.
So
Um,
true.
and so she sent it to me, and I started trying to read, and it was just, again, it wasn't right. It just it did not feel like what I needed it. And I'm going to
Mm.
be really honest, as I was pulling these cards, I'm like, I need to see that devil card. I need to see that tower card. Like, I need to see these cards because those were the cards that scared me. Those were the cards that I thought if I touched or I looked at, like something was going to summon itself. Which, by the way, is absolutely not true. That does not happen. There is no scariness around those cards. So I went to a shop in Casper, Wyoming, and I'm like, I went in and I'm just like, look, uh, I need a deck. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I need a real tarot deck. And not that the fairy tarot wasn't a real tarot deck, but it wasn't like the original deck. And so the lady was so helpful. And she said, you know, when you're reading tarot, start off with the original Rider Waite Smith deck, learn that, and then you can expand out to these broader energies.
Mhm.
And I went home, and the book I got was like tiny, and it had very few descriptions. And so I just started picking cards, and I picked the scariest cards. I went through the deck and picked the things that intimidated me the most in the major arcana, and I just sat there and I stared at them. And I'm like, okay, like nothing's happening, nothing's happening. And then I realized that, it was all about intent. And it was, what is my intent? And my intent is not bad. And so when I learned more about the cards, and started doing readings, I found amazing answers and really, really insightful things. And I realized that it wasn't this scary, like thing that I had been taught that it was. It was it was very, very helpful. And I think that kind of, Rebecca, I'm going
Mhm.
to go ahead. I know we said we were going to address these at the end, but
Rebecca's asking
um,
some
th-
killer questions.
yeah, this
Really,
is
really
this
good.
is a good one here. I was raised in a cult that says this is demonic. I know and trust you. How would someone a little scared start? Where should I go to get a reading? What could it do for me? Rebecca, Karena would be happy to do a reading for you. I would be happy to do a reading for you. You can come to one of us. Um, and it is, I dealt with a lot of the same things, because I really did. I honestly thought that, like, Satan himself was going to show up at the foot of my bed. I was really afraid. Um, and that was just not the case, because that's not how I read, and it's not how Karena reads. It is more of a guidance. Um, and so what it does for me is that it allows it allows additional insight into the question that's asked. And maybe what we should do, Karena, toward the end is maybe pull a card, ask a general question,
Yeah.
and you can pull a card and I can pull a card, and then Rebecca, you can
Mhm.
see, because I think until you really see how that reading can look, it's kind of hard to explain it. Don't you think? I mean, do you have an answer I'm kind of fumbling?
No, you're not fumbling, Christy. And I love just the authenticity and truth and vulnerability you bring to all of your YouTube videos. It means literally the world to me. And
Oh,
yeah, if
thank you.
I think Rebecca's question is just phenomenal. And by the
Yeah.
time I reached tarot, I had worked through my fears from the astrology
Hmm.
side because I had been told that
Hmm.
was demonic. too. But that general fear of all of these things esoteric
Mhm.
and occult, um, just, I hear that and resonate with that so
Mhm.
deeply. And same,
Yeah.
early on I was like, yeah, I'm casting these astrology charts and, or
Right.
yeah, is this gonna summon a demon? And I do think it is up to every person for themselves to
Mhm.
figure out if tarot, astrology, any of the esoteric arts are for them or not. Um,
Mhm.
where I've really arrived is tarot is a tool. And there
Yeah.
are like with any tool, there are people who will
Mhm.
misuse the tool or use the
Mhm.
tool to be manipulative to other people.
Mhm.
Like a hammer is a great tool if you want to hammer nails on, in shingles
Right.
on a roof or something. But you could
Right.
use
Right.
a hammer to hit somebody's hand too. And so I
Right.
think,
Right.
tarot and astrology are really similar, where they're
Mhm.
not inherently angelic or demonic. They
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
tools. And
Mhm.
I loved, Christy, how you brought up the intention, where it's like, are we intending to be light workers and bring
Right.
good energy and higher
Mhm.
vibrations into what we're doing into the world? Or are
Mhm.
we trying to, be manipulative or spiteful, or, what are
Yeah.
we trying to do with that? And that's up to
Mhm.
each one of us. And, you know, I know people who have kind of the demonic presence around them. You don't need a tarot deck to get
No.
there. What you
Right.
need is kind of that bad intention.
Yeah.
That's really, I
Mhm.
think, what summons the darker forces. They feel
Yes.
that bad intention.
Yes.
And it is worth maybe mentioning that, even in the Bible, they did things like casting lots, which is
Mhm.
really based on the same premise where,
Mhm.
you're essentially throwing down some dice, some sticks, and you're saying, however this
Right.
lands, we believe this has meaning and we're going to abide by
Right.
it. So,
Right.
yeah, I think
Right.
there's a precedent through all of cultures from the
Mhm.
beginning of recorded history, including, different sects like
Mhm.
Christianity, for this, hey, this works. We don't know exactly how. Um,
Mhm.
and again, it's kind of about how do you use that guidance, that information that you're getting.
Yes. Yes. And I think um, there's some really good questions that just
Ah, I know.
Wally.
It's almost like we cannot ignore these questions.
I know. Wally, why do you think occultism is such a target for Christians in particular? Why would they arrive at the conclusion it's a negative practice? I can share my opinion on this. This is just my opinion. I take it for what it's worth. Christianity is a very patriarchal arrangement. And by patriarchal, I mean that the man is in charge. Now, please, I'm going to note right here, I am not a feminist. I love men. I love masculinity. I love femininity. I love all of it. But originally, if you go back historically, and facts are facts, you had the pagans, and then as the different Christian empires started taking over and conquering things, they started taking from some of those pagan things and kind of forming them into Christians, to the Christian things such as Christmas and things like that, and making it so that it was easier to so that the conquered societies adapted to the new control, the new regime, a little easier. In occultism, witchcraft, paganism, whatever label you want to stick on it, women have a lot of power. There's a lot of power that is given to the women. Uh, you know, Goddesses, high priestesses, and as the Bible became more prevalent as the way of teaching, you took that away from women, and you took them out of a place of being able to be a priestess, for example, to if you look at the religion I grew up in, women are not allowed to be preachers, right? Women cannot be preachers, they cannot be deacons. The only way they can serve in a church is as like a Sunday school teacher. And again, if you are a Christian, that is amazing, and I totally respect where you are in your belief system. This is just directly answering Wally's question. And so as the patriarchy started going and women fell more and more into the background, it kind of became this thing that was not okay because it was practiced by the heathens and the pagans, and Christianity was what was seen as being the oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue, civilized. And so it became uncivilized, and it really got pushed back. And I think sometimes, as with anything, the wrong people show up, and certain things get twisted. And a true patriarchy is not healthy. Just like a true, like feminine run society isn't necessarily healthy either. You have to have a balance. And so it was just a very easy way to control that narrative in that situation. And there was just a lot of things that you can't explain because the occult takes in things like dreams, visions, seeing auras, again, lots of other gods and goddesses, where if you look to the Christian faith, it's one. And so it just kind of got tricky, but a lot of it had to do historically with getting the conquered people to assimilate into the more civilized societies. Karena, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's hard to know exactly how things worked out through the course of history, but I do
Right.
absolutely think your point about patriarchy when that started getting introduced is a really good one. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, all men and women have some masculine and some feminine energy. No one person is 100% one way or the other. Um,
Right.
but it is true that the traditional, yin, more feminine energy is more, intuitive, internally focused, more esoteric. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
the traditional male yang energy is more direct, go to war, fight someone,
Mm-hmm.
kill a wild boar. And so those energies are
Right.
just very different. The yang is very external,
Mm-hmm.
changing your environment very directly. Whereas the yin energy is much more, changing the world, but doing it through these internal, more esoteric, energetic ways. And so then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, as the patriarchy came in, those intuitive ways really fell out of favor. And then, I do agree also with what Rebecca noted. If you think about governments, and for
Mm-hmm.
quite a long time Christianity was associated closely with some big
Mm-hmm.
governments
Right.
in the
Mm-hmm.
world. It's actually, you don't want people to have a direct line of communication with God or the
Mm-hmm.
universe or something bigger. You kind of want to be that authority for them.
Right.
And so, it is much easier to control a
Mm-hmm.
civilization. Um, and that took place in so many ways throughout history. You saw that where,
Right.
for quite a long time, only the priests could read. So they would tell
Mm-hmm.
you what the Bible said. And so I think things like tarot or astrology, really any of the esoteric divination systems, it's kind of giving power to the individuals to
Right.
have a connection with the
Mm-hmm.
divine. And
Mm-hmm.
that is really scary for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
organizations where their survival requires there to be a hierarchy. So I think,
Right.
yeah, Rebecca's point too about the fear and control, I think there's definitely some of that.
Yes, yes, there is, and like I said, we're not like down on men or anything like that. It's
Mhm.
just kind of how it organically happened, and just kind of the way that things. Oh, did I freeze?
No, you're
It's
good. We see you.
okay. it's how things like organically happened. It's Rebecca, you've got some really good questions. I love that you guys came ready with these. So let's go ahead and let one of the questions was, and Ben had asked it, and it's pinned, so when it comes up, we'll have Stasia skip over it. Does the tarot decks, do they have the same imagery? The answer is yes. They've got all of the same cards. Now, for example, Karina has a really cute Winnie the Pooh deck. There are some different other decks. So it's going to be there in some form, which is why starting with the traditional Rider-Waite deck is the best way to do it, because once you kind of get that imagery sort of seared into your mind, it's really easier to expand out to those more beautiful, maybe a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not quite so traditional decks, because you'll know the Ace of Cups means this, so yeah. So with that, so was your first deck the traditional Rider-Waite deck? Oh no, you said it was the Marigold deck.
It was, but then after that party, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I need something friendlier for a day-to-day basis.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't want all black cards, and there was a beauty to that deck, but there was an intensity too.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as
Mm-hmm.
someone just starting out, I felt like I
Uh-huh.
wanted something different. Um,
Uh-huh.
I considered the Rider-Waite Smith deck, and that was actually the second deck I bought for myself. But the first one was this Shadowscape tarot deck.
Yes,
And it
this is
was, oh, I just had to laugh, Christy, when you were like, yeah, I got the fairy deck because that seemed
beautiful.
like less demonic.
Right?
That was really where I was at, with this one is I
Yeah.
was like, oh, these are just like beautiful fairies. This
Right.
feels lighter.
It feels
Um,
good. Yeah.
and it was really helpful. I didn't know this at the time, but yeah, that Shadowscapes tarot deck is very strongly inspired by the Rider-Waite Smith imagery. So
Mm-hmm.
learning those images really helped me when I transitioned over. Um,
Uh-huh.
for me, I love the Rider-Waite Smith deck, and it's
Mm-hmm.
for sure one of my go-to daily decks. But it was hard
Mm-hmm.
for me at first to kind of get
Mm-hmm.
used to the imagery. It is from a
Mm-hmm.
different time. It was
Yes.
invented in, I think, kind of the Victorian England time frame. So some of
Uh-huh.
that
Uh-huh.
imagery is pretty religiously inspired, even though
Yes.
this is an esoteric group.
Right.
So there were some
Uh-huh.
cards like the Hierophant, for example, who looks very much
Mm-hmm.
like a pope papal figure, where I was just like,
Yes.
oh, I don't know, because I had kind of um, moved away from the, strict Christianity I was raised in by that point. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go back to that with a tarot deck inspired by that. So I love the Rider-Waite Smith
Right.
now, absolutely. But I felt like I kind of needed this one as a nice, friendly, light feeling intro deck that, this one has no religious connotation at all in any direction. So it felt very neutral.
And just so you guys know, this is the card that she's talking about.
I love how you had that right ready to go, Christy.
Let me ask you this, because I do this. So maybe we should touch on this a little bit before we continue on. Different decks have different energies. And some of them are going to be a more intense energy that's really great for like those really deep readings. Like when you get asked a really tricky question, you're like, we need this deck. Some decks are very light and airy, and others just, bam, they lay the hammer down. I interview every single one of my decks. Do you do the same thing? Do you interview your tarot decks?
I don't know exactly what you mean by interview, but I do spread the cards out, and I
Uh-huh.
basically look at each one in turn, kind of, um, yeah, it feels like some type of an energetic interview. And then I
Uh-huh.
also will do a few initial card pulls, where I'll
Uh-huh.
kind of shuffle the deck for the first time, pull a couple of cards, almost to kind of, you know, without me putting a definitive question out there, what does the deck
Hmm.
want to tell me? Um,
Ah,
so yeah, I do that. I don't know if that's what you consider
so
interviewing. What is your process?
I have an actual tarot spread that I do. And it is like, what is your energy as a deck? What can you teach me? What is our relationship together?
Mm.
How does the deck see me? What's its strength? What's its weakness? And it tells you a story. And man, Rebecca, you are just showing up with it,
The
hun.
best
You are showing
questions.
up.
So good.
Stasia, glad you're here. I did the intro. There was no flub ups. I've been pinning things. We're super happy. Life's good. So I interview it because I have found that when I do that spread, it really is um, spot on. As far as how to like really work with the energies. Rebecca, I'm going to go ahead and answer this question. This was something I was going to bring up. There is a really okay. So if you are, I have the Rider Waite Smith deck. This is my very first deck that I ever bought. It is very worn. I will show it to you in a minute. Um,
Mhm.
this
Yep,
is
mine too.
yes. There is a deck of cards, and it is called the Before Tarot, and it's about $35. You can buy it on Amazon. You might be able to find it in some shops. I had a difficult time finding it. I had to have a shop actually order it for me through Amazon. This was when I was living in Alaska. Um, that deck, so what I would do is I would get that deck and I would set the deck aside and I would keep the book. And the reason is because the book is very, very detailed. So it goes through numerology. So what does every number mean? Like if you pull a 5 card, what does the 5 represent? It goes through colors. What does each color represent? Then it goes through the major arcana and it goes through the minor arcana. It tells you the astrology sign that's associated with it, the planet that is associated with it, the meaning. And it is very, very informative. I've never been able to just find that book, so you do have to buy the deck. So I would buy the deck, I would get the Rider Waite deck. You'll see that here in a minute. And then I would get that book and I would just do that. If you are looking for a good tarot journal, Virtual Planner is who I go
Mm.
through, and it's WRITUAL Planner. They're based out of Colorado. They are amazing. Highly recommend. Anything that they sell on their site is great. And they actually have a tarot journal. They've got a 1 card or a 3 card spread journal. You can get little stickers or stamps, and then you go through, you pull your cards, you put down the sticker or the stamp, and then write down what it means. All of that, if you were looking for all of that together, I think that journal is like maybe $40, 35 for the beginner tarot. And it's a beautiful deck, by the way. And the only reason I would set it aside is just until you really get the hang of it, then you can pick it up. And then the Rider Waite deck, I don't know how much. Tarot decks are usually
Not
between what, 25 and $50. So you'd probably be about $150 into everything, but then you would really have a good thing. And after that, finding a loving one, the best thing to do is touch them. Just pick up the cards,
Mhm.
hold them. And that's another thing, Karina, I was going to ask you. So I have certain decks I don't let people touch. And
Yes.
now you have to be very, very special. This is one of them. You have to be very special. If I let you touch my Rider Waite deck, you mean something to me. Um, Other decks, I'm like, put your energy all over it. Do
Mhm.
you do that with your decks too? Do you have decks that you kind of keep to yourself?
I do. Yeah, because I think and this is almost the same way you would think about any one of your possessions or your house. Like you wouldn't just
Hmm.
invite everybody off the street into your home. It's kind of your
Hmm.
space with your energy, your sanctuary, so to speak.
Yeah.
And yeah, this feels very similar where there are some things where it's like, yeah, you have to be a special person to kind of put your energy on this deck.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
then, if there are people, it does not happen often, honestly, that there are
Hmm.
people I really let touch my decks. But when they do, I
Hmm.
kind of clear them before I would go and do
Yes.
another reading. Just
Hmm.
and again, even if it's someone whose energy I love, because it's
Hmm.
important. The deck is a tool of mine, so it's
Right.
important for it to have my energy, and not energy I don't understand that may be incredibly beautiful energy, but is somebody else's.
Well, and if you just look at ours, if you were to pick up my deck, you would probably be like, oh, "This is chaos."
I would not. You,
You'd be
you are
like,
not as chaotic as you think
"What?"
you are.
I feel that way sometimes. I'm just like, um, but yes. Now let's talk about clearing decks for a minute because
Mm,
people may or may not know what that means. When we talk about clearing decks, it's no different. Rebecca, we're going to answer that question right now. Stasia, if you want to put that up there, we're going to hit it. Rebecca's coming in hard today. Pay attention to this chick. She's on a roll. So we all have our own kind of energetic fingerprint, right? And it's unique to us. And um, when when we read for other people, what I do is I open myself up to their energies. I invite their spirit guides, ascended masters, gurus to come work with me. And that way our energies can connect. After you do that, you want to close off that connection because you want to give the energy back to them. And then to clear it just means like imagine you were cooking on a countertop and you've got flour and sugar and salt and all of this stuff kind of spilled everywhere and you've got your utensils everywhere. You have to clean up right before you go on to the next thing. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're clearing the deck, and there's a lot of ways you can do that. One really simple way that I do it is I just knock 3 times, swipe 3 times. That's a very simple way. Um, to kind of break up that energy. So as you knock on the deck, you're actually breaking up that energy and you're sweeping it away. My favorite way to really, really cleanse the deck, if I haven't used it for a long time, I use Palo Santo because it smells amazing. Y'all, it
mhm.
smells like peppermint. But it is considered holy wood. And the reason I love Palo Santo is because one, it smells really good, but two, it clears out the unhealthy energy and it leaves the healthy, positive energy. So it's only taking the stuff that is really not beneficial and it's moving it along its way. That's my favorite way to do it. You can also put it out in the moonlight.
Mhm.
And Karina, what's your favorite way to kind of clear your decks?
I love the ways you just mentioned. I also will use crystals sometimes,
Hmm.
either quartz or selenite,
Hmm.
setting those intentionally on the deck.
Hmm.
Selenite in particular, if I totally want to clear it. Quartz, if I want to reset my intention for the deck,
Hmm.
because quartz holds, the intention, whereas selenite is kind of a clearer of energy.
Hmm.
But I do think I would be interested in your thoughts too, Christy. Um, these rituals, whether it's putting a crystal on the deck or knocking the deck,
Hmm.
um, I think they are for us, honestly, to help us feel the intention. Rituals
Hmm.
have been used for thousands and thousands of years across all different cultures, whether that is drumming, whether that is incense. There's kind of and I personally don't think all of that is necessarily the most
Hmm.
important thing, but it
Hmm.
really sets a solemn note to our
Yeah.
intention. So we're not treating it lightly. We're not just like, hey, the deck is cleared. we're really kind of taking that moment to perform our
Mhm,
ritual. And then I do think for rituals that have a history to them,
mhm,
so selenite, for example, does have a history of being used to clear out energy. I think
yeah,
by following some of those rituals, we're almost getting the benefit of the lineage and the many
mhm,
people who have done it before.
yeah,
But yeah, I almost feel like even if you don't know anything about clearing
mhm,
decks, just approaching your deck with um, a sense of purpose and a sense of
mhm,
intention, and like, yeah, I want this to be used for light. I want
mhm,
this to be used to connect with, my guardian spirits, the spirits of the people
mhm,
I'm reading for. Um, I think that's the most important thing. I think putting a piece of selenite in contact
mhm,
with the cards won't actually clear it if you don't have
mhm.
the intention behind it.
Yes, I agree. And I love that you brought up ritual because I have a ritual I do every single time. And if I don't do it, I literally like stop and I'm like, oh.
It doesn't
So
feel
what
right
I,
anymore. Yeah.
no, it doesn't. So what I do is I cast a circle and all that does is it just allows energy to open up in a specific area.
Mhm.
But I cast a circle and then I invite in my spirit guides, ascended masters, gurus, angels, whatever energy wants to come be a part of the reading. I invite in the same for the people that I'm reading for. And by the way, it's really important to note that you have to give your permission to someone to read for you, because otherwise that's very
Mhm.
voyeuristic and it's very intrusive. And it can make you as a reader feel icky, like physically, it can make you feel icky. And it doesn't bring in good juju, right? So don't read for anybody that you don't have permission to read for. But um, the other thing that I do is I banish my ego for the course of the reading.
Mhm.
That way, my own thoughts and my own prejudices are not getting in the way of the message. Then I always ask for the cards I need to see. And I bring in Yusuri Reiki energy as well. So I'm bringing
Mm.
in that beautiful Reiki energy. Sometimes I get a little bit of a channeling, which is a message. Sometimes I don't.
Mhm.
I'm not somebody
Mhm.
that always gets it. When it comes through, though, it comes through. And then at
Mm.
the end, when I'm done reading, I close the circle up and I thank all of the energies that were used. And to be clear, I also don't banish lower level energies because sometimes
Mhm.
those lower lying energies are a part of the reading.
Mhm.
So I do protect myself. But that's kind of my ritual. And then I get done. And then, like you said, I set the intent to clear out all of the energies, to clear everything up and to clear the deck, for the next, especially if it was an intense reading. I
Mhm.
mean, I do it for all readings, but if one reading was particularly heavy, Rebecca, it's okay. We got put them up there, hun.
We
We're
should
good.
have a whole session on crystals, honestly, because that's a
We should.
big topic right there.
Let's let's write that down. I'm going to write that down. That way that we know to do that because it is each one of these. We're talking about them like, oh, it's this or it's that and it really is a very little piece of a much larger picture. Like I
Mhm.
always, whenever I do my readings, I always have this particular stone with me. And I love this
Mhm.
stone and I hold it and I
Mhm.
roll it around but it brings in emotion for me and helps me with my readings. So I always have it sitting on my deck or sitting close to me for its
Mhm.
energy. Um, but yes, so I agree. It's the intent and it is the ritual. It gets you in that
Mhm.
solemn moment of okay, this is we're working. The way I see it is we're working together to figure out the answer that the universe has for you that you might not necessarily be seeing. It's kind of how I see
Hmm.
it. So,
Yeah, I love that. And one thing you're saying, which I guess just want to remind people of too, um,
mhm,
yeah, sometimes the lower, sometimes, oftentimes people don't come to a tarot reader if everything in their life is totally great and they're all surrounded by amazing, positive, great energy. It's usually when people are struggling, having some
mhm,
difficulty in relationships, jobs, things like that. And they're
mhm.
looking for how they can best approach those circumstances. And so there
Yeah.
is almost um, it's important not to eliminate those lower energies because you can create an
Mhm.
energetic bubble for yourself that says, no, those can't come in.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, it is important. And this is not even just with tarot and astrology. Even
Mhm.
if you're having a deep conversation with a friend who's going through a really hard time, it's
Yeah.
important to kind of put up your energetic boundaries so that you aren't taking in and internalizing all of that energy.
Mhm.
So you are communicating with it, but it's still separate. And again, this isn't just a tarot reading thing. This is,
Right.
for all of us, those energetic boundaries are really important, regardless of, even if we're just having conversations or a work relationship or whatever.
Right. So let's touch on that for a moment because I know there's a couple people in the group um, that really are hugely empathic. So, how do you set up your energetic boundaries? Because I have a pretty solid way of doing it. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, and interestingly, every person I know has their own
Yeah.
process. And I worked with a teacher early on who gave some options, and it was really interesting
Mhm.
how different people really gravitated towards different options. So for me personally, I go through a ground, clear, protect, where
Mhm.
first I'm grounding down, I'm visualizing those tree roots into the earth, feeling, not like I'm going to wash away on an energetic tide, but just like fully grounded down into the earth. And I'm also a Taurus, so connecting to earth and nature energy is really resonant with me and brings me back to
Mhm.
my authentic place. Um,
Mhm.
and then I want to clear off any of my energy that is not going to be helpful. I think you mentioned like kind of banishing your ego, Christy. I feel like
Mhm.
it's really
Mhm.
similar to that because,
Mhm.
we have our own emotional stuff going on and our own energetic stuff going on, and it may not be helpful for a session.
Right.
So for me, I actually visualize almost like a flame passing through me and burning
Mhm.
off any of the bits of energy that are not going to be helpful for that reading
Right.
so that I'm left
Right.
with just the higher energy parts of myself. And then there's a protect phase where I basically visualize a big bubble of white light energy around me so that if there are lower or darker energies, um,
Mhm.
they can't come through the bubble. I can communicate with them through the bubble, but they can't enter
Right.
my energetic bubble. Only my energy gets to be in there.
Right. Right. Real
What is
quick,
your
plant.
process?
Oh, well, yeah, plant. All of the comments that are pinned have not been asked yet. Those are questions. We're going to get to those at the end. We've been answering questions that are most pertinent to what we're talking to at the moment, but all of those are kind of stuck aside. So a lot of people have questions that haven't been answered. It's just Rebecca's been asking questions that tie directly into what we're talking to at the
So
moment.
good. Yes.
Um,
Yeah, Rebecca
my,
and Wally are right there with the good questions and comments.
yes.
So
Um,
grateful.
My way is much more forceful.
I feel like that
Surprise.
matches with our personalities.
Right. Karina's like, and y'all, this is mine, okay? I come in like a wrecking ball, right? And I love to use essential oils, and we all have chakras.
Mm,
And I make sure to place specific oils on specific chakras. So this is my third eye.
mm,
This is your your psychic chakra. I always open that up and I put like some sort of road opener or something like that there. Also on my throat so that I can
mm.
speak truth, and then also on my heart so that the messages come with love. So sometimes I'll do 4 or 5 different essential oils. Sometimes I'll just do one. It kind of depends on what I'm called to. And then what I do is I'm like, okay, you know, I'm like, I call in all of my ascended masters, guides, gurus, spirit guides to protect me in this. Lower vibrations, you are welcome to come through, but you can only give me the message that you have, and then you get out of here. You are not welcome to hang around. You don't get to stick around. You don't get to feed. You don't get to do any of that. You are out of here. And I make it very clear. I banish my ego, so that I take my personal biases or beliefs out of it. And
Mhm.
if I forgot that step, which I have a couple of times, and I get into a reading, I can feel it. And I'm like, nope,
Mm.
we're starting over. I missed a step.
Mm.
And then the other thing that I do is I'm just like, anything that's out there that wants to protect me, go ahead and show on up. Because
Love
there
that.
could be, yeah, I mean, there are so many different energies, right? There's fairy energy,
Mhm.
fae energy, there's Reiki energy, there's all kinds of energies. And, something could really want to show up and protect me that I'm not familiar with, that is very protective. And so, but I do always banish my ego, and I always make very, very clear that, look, if you're lower vibrational, you've got a message, you can give it to me, but then get to getting. And I'm very firm when I say it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very like, boom, this is what it is. And I do that for me just because in my own life, I'm really kind of firm about boundaries. I mean, I really
Mhm.
do stick to them. And so it's just kind of like a natural continuance for me to have it look that way. But there's so many ways you can do it. And I think just
Mhm.
it's important that you do it. It's important that
Mhm.
you protect yourself. It's important that you do allow those energies that have messages for you to come through, but make sure that they understand you've got to go. Excuse me, you've got to go. And like I said, I love using the essential oils too for protection or to
Mhm.
open things up a little bit. Um, I will tell you a funny story here. I am highly allergic to star anise. I did not know I was allergic to star anise oil, so let me tell y'all what I did. Um, and it is very powerful, like psychic oil to kind of open things up for you, get the juices flowing. So I just get out my little bottle of star anise oil and I put it right here and I put it right here and I put it right here and I'm doing the reading and I start kind of feel like it starts to itch and I'm like, it's
Oh.
okay, and I get done. Y'all, I had a chemical burn because I was just that allergic to it from it on my forehead and right here on my neck. Lasted 2 weeks. I did everything I could to get it to go away. I mean, it was just really awful. It got really red and scaly. So before you just go putting random essential oils on your face, make sure you're not allergic to it. Just, a little bit from experience there. Don't do that. um,
Oh.
so yes. So what other decks do you have for us? Because I know you've got some beautiful ones. What
Oh,
other?
I
What
have
are some of your
so
other
many
favorites?
decks. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe this is even harkening back a little bit to some of Rebecca's questions about, how to pick a deck.
Oh
So,
yeah.
and you mentioned, actually picking up the decks and feeling the cards. Absolutely. I
Mm-hmm.
love that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Also, I love backing tarot decks on Kickstarter. And one thing that I kind of look for is I read all about the author of the deck and I get a sense
Uh-huh.
of their energy kind of through their whole Kickstarter campaign. And so I've wound up with a
Nice.
lot of sort of, limited run decks
Uh-huh.
from
Yes.
Kickstarter that just have amazing, beautiful energy. And I feel the energy of the authors of the deck, which is important to me
Mm-hmm.
as well. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I have so many decks. Yeah, Shadowscape is one of the ones I go to a lot. I do use the Thoth deck, but the energy in that is more intense, so I pick when I
Mm-hmm.
use it. It has to feel
Mm-hmm.
right. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a kind of Celtic Druid based tarot deck. I've got a cat tarot deck because that's how I roll. You can probably see, my cats at
Oh
some point in
yeah.
the background. Um, I've got an astrology tarot deck where there's a constellation on each one of the cards. Um,
Hmm.
I I have so many decks, I actually wouldn't even know how to enumerate all of them. It's it's a problem. But again, the
Oh,
imagery is so gorgeous and you're getting
it,
little pieces of energy,
mhm.
from these amazing creators. So, I love the
Yeah,
process of learning about their energy and, buying their deck.
right.
Oh, the cat
Yeah.
deck, it's where it's at, Rebecca. Yes, the cat deck is where it's
I had so many decks, and when I went back on the road, I gifted all of my decks to
Mm.
my friend who was just getting started, and I only have two decks left. So I kept my
Okay.
Rider Waite Smith deck, which this is some of the imagery from that. We'll go over some of these cards, but just so that you can kind of
Mm.
see. I will show you. Okay, so this card really scared me. I sat with that card for a while, but this is not a scary card. This card no longer scares me. And then the other card that I was like, oh, what is that? There were a couple others. That was one of them. The other one I'm looking for. Oh, yeah. Okay, the tarot or the tower. I was like, oh, wow, people are leaping to their death. What's going on here? And then the other one was the Ten of Swords. And I
Mhm.
figured if I sat with those three cards, because to me they were the most intense cards, then I could be like, oh. Now, the other deck I have, I got this from Ritual Planner. This is a watercolor deck. And
Ooh.
this, look at the difference in the imagery. Like,
Ooh.
let me go
Yeah.
through and find the same cards just so you can get a comparison here. Um, and, they are it's so hard to explain how every deck has its own imagery, its own feel, its own, like, nothing is it can be the exact same card. Um, it just has a very different feel to it. So, for example, here's here's this beautiful watercolor one. That is a lot less intimidating than this thing, right? Like
Mhm.
it's the same card,
Yeah.
but it looks very different. And then you've got the tower. Again, same card. It just is visually a little bit different. So that's one of the big things too. Like what speaks to you? You don't have to get the Rider Waite Smith. Like this one is the watercolor. I got this one from Virtual Planner. I think it was like $50, and it's just super beautiful.
That
There's
is
there's the back.
beautiful.
And these are the two decks that I kept. So I told my husband I get to go on a spree of bringing new decks into my life. And he's like, great. That's great.
Just what's
So
needed.
happy.
More tarot
You're
decks.
right. That's what I wanted. um, did you have some cards that you wanted to show us, or did you want to go ahead and get to some of the pinned comments? Um,
Yeah, I can just share a couple of cards that intimidated me in
yeah,
addition to the ones you brought up. And then, yeah, I'm
right,
realizing we're over an hour. This is just such a fun topic to talk about. So then we can get to
right.
some of the comments and questions. Um, so this one, the Three of Swords, was kind of
Mhm.
a scary one for me. It felt
Uh-huh.
like, there is kind of that violence idea, that
Yeah,
heartbreaking, that, malintent. So
right.
this one
Hmm.
was intimidating for me. Oftentimes, the swords are some pretty intense imagery. The
Yeah,
Nine of Swords also just felt
yeah.
resonant. I feel like all of us have been here at some point where we wake up
Right.
and we're just like, ah, bad dream, or we're
Yeah.
worried about things in real life and it's like 4 in the
Mhm.
morning. And so that was one. Um, the the Five of Pentacles also. This was
Yeah.
one, where these people are obviously so miserable out in the snow. Um, that one, and then the last one, the fives definitely have a vibe to them. That was the Five of
Oh,
Pentacles.
yes.
This is the
Yeah.
Five of Cups. Just kind of
Yes.
this air of sadness and despair. Not even quite having the
Mhm.
energy to lift your head. So yeah, in
Yeah.
addition to like the devil, some of the ones you mentioned, the Tower, those were
Yeah.
initially kind of like, oh, I don't like, the emotions of those cards. They're kind of scary when they come up at first.
Yeah, they really are. The other one that was intimidating to me was I'm trying to find it. And so, I joke, I'm an Aquarius, so I am represented by the swords. So, like my own, my own suit, I'm like, oh, really? This one.
Yeah.
This is such a deceitful card.
Yeah.
Anytime I see this come up in a reading, I'm like, oh boy. And the reason, guys, is because I look at it this way. There's a couple ways. Is he stealing these swords and like taking them and running away? Or is he about to get robbed and he's taken his best swords and leaving these
Hmm.
two behind? That's like, okay, you can kind of sacrifice it. It is kind of it is a card of deceit, but swords are all about intelligence. So it's also intentional deceit. It's deceit that has been
Hmm.
thought out, right? Like you put some thought into that. And while we're doing that, this is just a card of sheer betrayal. Like this is just
Yeah. The
when you
literal
see this,
stabbed in the back.
yes, in every PowerPoint you have, this is done. This is just it's done. And then the devil is a card actually about oppression. So it's about addiction. It's
Mhm.
about being oppressed, being burdened. And this is what I always point out. So you'll notice that they're naked. It's not sexual why they're naked. It's vulnerability. And you'll
Mhm.
notice here that their chains around their necks are pretty loose, but they're not bound up any other way. So they're sitting in this kind of by choice. They could take that off
Yeah.
and walk away. And it's just kind of stuck there. So now that we did that, let's show some of our good cards that we like. Let's not
Yeah.
scare everybody away
Right.
and be like, oh God, no. Forget it. I'm out. We know.
Do you want me to
What?
start? Do you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead and start. Um,
Okay. And there's many, many cards I like in the decks, but in this deck, but yeah, just pulling out a few. The Wheel of Fortune, I'm never unhappy when I see this one. It indicates
yes.
changing of circumstances and usually for the better, usually coming out of a
Mhm.
difficult time toward a good time. So totally love
Yes.
this one. Um, I just think this is such a beautiful card. The Six of Pentacles, the card of
Oh, I
generosity,
love
the
it.
card of sharing
Yes.
with others. That's
Yes.
just one of my favorites.
Hmm.
The six, all of the sixes, just like we sort of saw a theme with the fives, the
Yeah.
six theme is emerging. I think the
I
Six of
love that.
Cups is just precious. These
Hmm.
two little figures, one giving flowers in a cup to another one. It's just such a beautiful innocence
Yes.
and
Yes.
love. And then there are quite a few of the major arcana cards. I like the High Priestess, the Empress.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
Magician is one that really
Yes.
resonates with me. Mercury is really strong in my birth chart. And so,
Uh-huh.
the Magician correlates with that. And so
Oh,
I
great.
find that one comes up a lot when it's about me sort of getting back to my
Hmm.
authentic self. And that's the other thing, too, is for
Please.
each individual person, of
Hmm.
course, there are some cards that are just nice across the board,
Right.
but there are
Right.
other cards that you'll find, oh, this always kind of represents me. This always kind of represents a significant
Yeah.
other, a close friend, a family member. And so you start to kind of learn how you are being talked to, through
Yes.
the imagery in the deck and what's specific to you.
Yes. So on that note, High Priestess card. This is my
Such a good
card.
one.
Anytime I see this in a reading, I'm like, oh, there I am. It does represent Cancer, but it's also this imagery. It's this deep spiritual knowledge. It's things from the dark coming to light. And again, we've talked about Persephone before, and so you've got the pomegranates, and
Mm-hmm.
the whole, like, it might seem a little hinky at first, but it's not really. I love this card. The other
Mm-hmm.
card that I really like is the Star card. Um,
That's
Also Aquarius
Aquarius.
card, but I love it because it's balanced.
Mm.
She's watering the land as well as replenishing the water, so she's very balanced. She's vulnerable, but just enough. And really, I just love this card. The Strength card is my favorite. I love it. It's so
That is
beautiful.
such a good one.
It is the one card in the deck that will overcome this devil energy every time. You have strength, you can persevere over this. I love that. And then Ace of Cups. I just love the Ace of Cups. It's so beautiful. It's positive, new beginnings, happy emotions, all of the things. I love. And then there was one other one. Where did it go? Do you need to go, Karina? Are you getting close on time?
I'm good for another little bit, up until I
Okay.
think probably 9.
Okay.
Is that
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Where did it go? I just had it. Did I drop it? Um, the other card. Well, I just had it, y'all.
Do you find that? Because I find that sometimes a card will literally leap out of the deck or leap off of my table, or
Yes.
it's almost like, the tarot seems to have a sense of humor sometimes, and it's
Oh,
like,
yes.
"Whoop, you can't
Oh,
find me now."
right. And like I just had it laid out too. Um, yes. So whenever a card leaps out of the deck for me, I'm like, oh, and if it's a couple, then I will take them. If it's like half the deck, then that's just my hands. But
Yeah,
um, to me, that is like, hey, pay attention to me. This is an important
same.
message. And I also read the back of the deck for energy that you might not see. And sometimes people are like, because like if you're dealing cards, you don't want to deal from the back of the deck. So if people see you pulling from the back of the deck, they're kind of like, what are you doing? But a lot of times that's the energy that you don't see. Here's another card that I like. Now, this one is a little strange. This is the Death card. Now, this is actually represents Scorpio energy. I'm surrounded by a lot of Scorpios in
Mhm.
my life, but this is all about transformation. So
Yes.
this really is about that beautiful phoenix rising from the ashes. Like
Mm.
anytime that I see this, to me, it's a very empowering card, a very kind of, you know, really just beautiful transformative card. I don't see it as a negative card, if you would.
Yeah, I'm scanning through the Shadowscape deck really quick because it actually has a phoenix rising from the ashes
Oh,
for the death
beautiful.
card, and I love it
Yes.
so much. Mm. Yes.
And yes, that
Isn't that
isn't, guys, isn't
gorgeous?
that a
Oh,
beautiful card? And you can
I
see the
love that.
difference in the cards. This is the same card, but this is why
Mm-hmm.
you want to start with a simpler card first, because if you were just looking at Karina's card, you'd be like, huh?
Right.
I don't get this.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and start putting some of those pinned questions and comments up. That way that we can get those. Oh yes, Tony. Okay. Um, in the last week, I do a 3-card spread each day. Every day, I pull 2 major arcana, and the second card, a couple of days, it's been all 3 cards. I'm not sure what this means. So, Tony, I would say it depends on what question you're asking. Um, that, and what cards you pull. Major arcana, again, those are those bigger moments in life that are those things that are going to happen, and it's how you choose to navigate through that is going to set the tone for that. Um, so I kind of, I mean, unless you want to share what the cards are, I mean, I think maybe if you shared what a couple of the cards might be, we might be able to help a little bit more. But Karina, did you have something to add? It's just big
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, Christy, totally is true, that it depends on the questions you're asking and which card you're getting for which question. In general, though, the threes are, the aces and the twos. You're really kind of starting off on this new journey, represented by this new suit. And by the time you get to the three, you're starting to hit your first obstacle. So all of the
Yeah.
threes definitely have a, oh, this isn't going to be quite as easy as I thought. There's going to be some issues I'm going to have to work through. So it may be
Yeah.
that, that is some of the energy coming through, Tony.
Mhm. If you want to drop what a couple of those cards were, or maybe what your question was, we might be able to give you a little bit more insight.
Mm.
Yeah,
It looks like
it
Tony
just
said
depends.
strength and world keep coming up. Um,
Okay.
Yeah, and again, some of it depends on the questions for sure, but
Mhm.
strength, as Christy mentioned, that is a beautiful card. That's really that
Mhm.
indication that you have the resilience. Again, it depends on the question,
Mhm.
but in general, there
Mhm.
is the resilience and energy needed to move forward through the obstacle
Mhm.
that you have to move forward through. And the world is the energy of Saturn, which is kind of, we live in a three-dimensional world. We need our
Mhm.
strength. We don't live in a
Mhm.
world where everything is super easy. So it makes sense to me that those cards would come up together, because it's like, okay, you're
Mhm.
in the three-dimensional world with all these obstacles, but you have the strength and resilience to kind of move through these at a high level without knowing all the details of the questions. That feels like the energy.
Yes, and also the world, she's naked as well, so you're a little vulnerable in moving through it. You might be a little vulnerable in your strength, just navigating how that looks. And, to me, it affects your whole world. The world literally means your world. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of affecting everything. Not bad cards though,
Mm-mm.
not negative. I mean, I wouldn't be like, oh, think through your options. It's just you're going to have to rely on your higher power, a good spiritual practice, a good meditation, grounding, that type of thing. And what's coming your way is it's gonna affect your world. You're gonna feel a little bit vulnerable in it, but um, you know, strength is that amazing card in the deck that it just kind of trumps everything. Is how I see it.
Yeah, and it seems
So,
like
yeah.
One of Tony's previous question was, is it weird that none of the cards have ever scared me? I find that they all have a meaning that is to be accepted or to make a change in your life. And yeah, exactly, Tony.
Yeah.
I do not think it's weird that none of the cards have ever
No.
scared you. We all kind of come in with our own, previous emotions and background. I
Mhm.
think it's amazing that, you just see each of the cards as a different type of energy, because that's what they are.
Yeah.
It's not like a
Mhm.
storm is inherently bad and sunshine is inherently good. They're just different
Right.
types of energy.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. Right. Awesome. Good question. All right. What do we have next?
Mhm.
Do all tarot decks? Yeah, we touched on that. Yes, they do. Unless you get
With
into the more
slight
intricate deck.
variations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the thought deck, there are a couple of cards switched around, but yes, for the
Hmm.
most part. And I think most of the modern tarot decks inherit from the Rider-Waite Smith Order of the Golden Dawn. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there were other orders, but none that got the traction that the Order of the Golden
Yeah.
Dawn
I,
got.
I love that. How do the cards work? Energies, intention, just wondering how all of that works. So I think we kind of touched on that. It's basically what you want to do is as you're headed in, you want to set a good firm intention. That's why I say in mine, show me the cards I need to see. That way, it just kind of gets to the point. Different decks work differently. They have different energies, like different people. So if you talk to me, depending on the day you catch me, you could get a real short answer or you could get a very long, rambly one. And so decks are kind of the same way. Some decks get to the point a little faster. Others tell a more flowy story to get there. And intention is really just, what do you want from it? Like, what is the point? Would be the best way. What is the point of what you're doing? So I would be like, okay, I'm looking for an answer to, I need to understand how this reconnection with my mom is going to go. I'm just making stuff up here. So show me all of the cards I need to see to understand this situation. And then as I pull the cards, because I set my intention around that, it's going to tell that story. And that's whatever story that, whatever question you ask, and then you just shuffle until it feels right, and then pull some cards. And we can pull a couple cards here at the end so you can kind of see it. But Karena, what does that process look like for you?
Yeah, I think Rebecca's question is so interesting, because
Mm-hmm.
when I first approached tarot too, I was like, how does this work? Like, this is
Yeah.
eerily accurate, but how does
Mm-hmm.
this work? And I think,
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful thing about tarot and frankly astrology is that they are not dogmatic about how
Mm-hmm.
they work. So,
Yeah.
they're not a belief system. They're a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more like, gravity is a thing. Gravity prevents
Mm-hmm.
us from floating off into outer space. Gravity keeps us on the surface of the earth.
Right.
Gravity works because anything that has mass, like the earth, attracts anything else that has mass, like us. But we don't
Mm-hmm.
know why that's true. We do not know why masses
Right.
attract each other, but we see that gravity works, and we're like, I'm still on the earth, so gravity must work. And so with tarot and astrology, I totally understand that for people who are new to it, there's a lot of skepticism. Does this
Mm-hmm.
really work? Is this really
Mm-hmm.
like gravity? Gravity is pretty easy
Mm-hmm.
to kind of prove. If you work with it quite a bit, I feel like I know what it was like to be a skeptic, but you see that it does work. And because it's not a belief system, it's not a religion, you can superimpose whatever belief system you have over top of it. If you,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you believe in anything that is greater than just what we see in the three-dimensional world, that can be God, that can be Buddha, that can be Jesus, that can be Mohammed, that can be the universe, that can be, light, universal energy, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that thing is you believe in, that's how this works.
Mm-hmm. And I will add too, a lot of times we as readers will get messages that come through to us that make no sense. Like I was doing a reading one time, it was on the psychic animist, and I'm like, and it was the most random thing. I remember it to this day. I was pulling a card for somebody, and I'm like, you know, there's this restaurant in Tacoma, Washington that we used to go to. It's actually in Fife, and it's called the Poodle Dog. And I have no idea what that has come into mind, but does that mean anything to you? And the person I was reading for went, yes, my mom lives in Tacoma and she has a poodle.
Mm.
And so how would I know that? You know what I mean? Like it, and a lot of times you kind of get these things that will come through every once in a while, and you you as a reader don't really understand what it means, but it's not for you to understand. It's for the person receiving the message to understand. And I think I've only had like one time where somebody's ever been like, I don't know what you're talking about. Um, for the most part, and this is where you also have to trust yourself, and trust your guides, and trust that, you are being used, because it's not, you're being used as a tool to, get this message out. The message isn't coming from you. you're the vessel that it's delivered in. So it's very when you Rebecca, when you get a tarot reading, it's you'll be like, okay.
And I think Carol has a really good question too, that
Mhm,
she just posted. Does tarot work a little like self-fulfilling prophecy? Does that come into play, or can it? And I think that's such a good question,
mhm,
because if you aren't eh, like, the placebo effect is a
mhm,
thing. That's
mhm.
why all medical trials have to have double-blind studies, because if we know that
Right.
we are getting the medicine, we will start feeling better,
Mhm,
um, regardless of what the drug itself is doing. And so, I think this is why, and Christy and I both mentioned this earlier, it's really important in your initial process to clear out the ego, clear out any parts
mhm,
of your energy that are just for you, that are not meant to be part of that session.
mhm,
And again, tarot is a tool. Can it be
mhm,
misused? Can you kind of make it into, what you want the answer to be, and you kind of convolute the meaning of the card until you get
mhm,
the answer you want? Totally,
mhm.
that can happen. I know a
Yeah.
couple of people who've played with tarot, and they basically keep drawing cards for something until they get a card they like. And it's like, yeah, I don't think that's how that
That's
works.
not how that
um,
goes.
but yeah, again, like, intention is everything, integrity is
Mhm,
everything. um,
mhm,
so ideally, you are not coming into these sessions with your own energy, your own agenda, wanting
mhm,
certain results. Then you
mhm.
can build it into a self-fulfilling prophecy. You want to come from that open, honest space where you really genuinely want guidance. I don't know if
Yeah.
you have more to add to that, Christy.
No, I think you answered that very well. That was a very good answer. Yeah, everything she said. Is clearing kind of part of creating focus and thinking your intention? Um, yeah. Um, uh, Sort of. For me, they're two different things.
Mm,
I imagine energy. So, like Rebecca, if I was reading for you, or I was reading for Karina, um, it's like plugging into a light socket, right? So I that's how I envision energy. So when I read for you, I'm like the outlet, and I kind of plug you into me, and that way the current of energy gets flowing, and I can work with that energy. And then when I'm done, I have to unplug it, right? So that I don't suck up all your energy and you don't suck up all of mine. But then I also have to clear anything of yours that's still stuck. So it's kind of like when you go to the beach and you try to rinse your feet off from the water, and then put your flip flops on, but you get sand on there. So it's kind of like that. So it's two different things. Intention is intention is everything, really. In divination, in meditation, in journaling, in like solid intention is going to get you so much further. And so I think everything should have a good intention behind it. And that's really what the focus is. Because you go from a very broad thing up here down to this is what it is. A lot of times too, when I'm reading, as I'm shuffling, I'm saying the questions that someone's asked me. So I'm like, um, what do I need to know about this new job? And that's
mhm.
setting the intention for the answers. So it's two different things, but intention is everything, from meditation to journaling to whether you read tarot or runes or chicken bones or tea leaves. Intention is a huge part of it, I think. Did you have anything you wanted to?
No, I agree completely. Yeah, intention you
Yeah.
need at each step of the process, the clearing
Mhm,
part, but also, the reading part, the disconnecting part. Yeah, every
mhm,
part.
mhm.
With the crystals one, I wonder if we should have a whole session just for crystals?
We
Because this is a great
yeah.
question, but I have the feeling that will be a whole other
Um,
topic.
you know what, Stasia, is there a way you can screenshot this question for us and we can come back to it? Um, I think to kind of quickly answer, we'll go into more depth, but I think to quickly answer, um, you know, anything can bring unhealthy energy. So instead of looking at it as like good energy, negative energy, look at it as healthy versus unhealthy energy might help a little bit more. Nothing really brings it. Energy is something that you're open to, and a crystal isn't inherently bad or inherently good, kind of like we talked about before. Like fire isn't inherently bad or good. It's bad if it burns your house down, but it's good if it keeps you warm. So again, this goes back to intention. Just this is a very high arching answer. So crystals don't bring in negative energy, and I'm not sure if not gotten properly. Do you mean like if somebody like stole it and gave it to you, or like
I have heard of things, because there are a lot of particularly gems, like valuable
Mhm.
gems around the world that are um, mined quite unethically. And,
Oh, is that
people
okay?
are in
Hmm.
the mine. I don't know if
Hmm.
that's what Rebecca means or not, but it's almost like, is their oppression and, fear that as
Kind of
they're
like blood
sort of being
diamonds. Is that what you're
forced.
talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha, gotcha. Okay,
I
gotcha.
don't know if
Okay,
that's
okay.
exactly what. And then I've also, heard quite a few people talk about, yeah, she says not harvest properly from the mine.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there is also, crystals do hold energy. For sure, they do
Mhm.
hold energy. Any object can hold energy, but crystals often hold them really well because of their
Mhm.
chemical, really aligned structure. So it is pretty important when you get a crystal to sort of attune it to you and set your
Mhm.
intention into it and clear out the same way you would clear a tarot deck, the same way, honestly,
Mhm.
it makes sense to clear anything in your house
Mhm.
that you don't know the origin of. Good to clear it out before you use it.
Yes, and I did that. Stuff that I bring in, I it doesn't come in the house without being cleared first.
Hmm.
Um, as far as a good place to get crystals, if you have a metaphysical shop in your town, those are very, usually good, dependable ways to get those. If you go through, like I said, virtual planner, and by the way, there's no like kickback or anything there, just an amazing site that you can go through. But when you're first getting into everything, I really recommend just picking it up and holding it. And what does it feel like?
Hmm.
Does it feel nice and warm in your hand and comfortable? Does it bring you a sense of calm, or does it feel cold? Does it make you feel anxious? Um, so for the first little bit, I would just recommend, going to a good reputable store, and you can just find that on Google. You can just Google metaphysical
Hmm.
shops near me, and then look at the pictures. How do you feel when you look at those and everything like that? And I would go pick out my crystals that way. But that's a great question, and we will do a whole thing on crystals because it is a big part of it, and it's honestly something I didn't even think of to do it. Topic
It'd be a
on.
good one. No, yeah, it's such
So
a
it'll
fascinating
be,
topic.
yes, yes, it'll be awesome. Um, I had an attachment once, ghost hunting of all things. Does that happen that you're aware of? Not having any ulterior motives, just wondering. So then you had a ghost attached to you, or you just really liked watching ghost hunting? Yes, attachments can happen. Um,
Mhm.
it a lot of times though is not like you are walking down an alley and something like nefariously jumps on you. A lot of times we kind of create our own poltergeists because our energy gets really crazy, and um, we just allow ourselves to go down this rabbit hole, and it kind of opens things up. I mean, attachments can happen. I don't think it's as common as what people would have you to believe. I mean, they definitely can be pretty nefarious, but it's not something that you see a lot. I mean, just normally. There's
I think
not
there's
things out
also,
there wanting to feed on you.
yeah, and I think kind of if you're out, again, everything sort of comes back to intention. And if
Hmm.
you're out ghost hunting, I could see where,
Hmm.
there's kind of, again, it doesn't have to be some crazy intention where it's like, I'm gonna go
Hmm.
find a ghost and they're gonna attach to me. But
Hmm.
we are sort of in that space at that point where we're kind of saying,
Hmm.
hey, I'm looking for ghosts.
Right.
And that can kind of,
Hmm.
unintentionally draw in some of that energy. So
Hmm.
it's actually not surprising to me that if you experienced an attachment, it was doing something like that. To
Hmm.
Christy's point, it's much less likely if you're just walking down the street and, a
Right.
spirit is like, oh, I'm going to jump on you today. And again,
Right.
intention is everything. So, and if we're
Hmm.
setting our energetic boundaries and we're saying, I want to attract light and good
Hmm.
vibrations, and that's all I
Hmm.
want, we're really kind of sending an anti invitation to anything that
Right.
might want to glom onto us.
Right. And I think it's important to note, there are, as Karina kind of said, there are people out there who practice, if you have light and then you have dark and then you've got the spectrum of gray, some people are on that darker side of gray. And
Hmm.
when you are on that darker side of gray, you're opening yourself up to a lot more things because you're just more open. And again, it goes to intention. I know some people who have had some pretty hinky energy attached to them, but they went looking for it like that. They weren't just innocently
Hmm.
walking down the street one day. I mean,
Yeah.
they were looking for it. They started kind of dabbling in that type of thing. And there's all different shades of gray, and gray is not bad, but gray is not an unhealthy place to be, but you do have to be very, very mindful. And the closer to the darker shades of gray you get, the more protection you need to have. So if you
Hmm.
are going to a haunted, supposedly haunted cemetery on New Year's Eve, or I mean on Halloween, and you're
Hmm.
like, "Ayo, I'm here," probably not the wisest thing to do, right?
I would
If you're
highly
walking,
recommend, yeah,
don't do
sorry.
that. if
Yeah,
you if you are just walking by that same cemetery, nothing's gonna, like Karina said, jump out. So this is where it gets a little more weedy to explain, because it's there's a lot of, like, I guess the one thing that we could really, really stress is intention and
yeah.
protection. That those are the
And I
two
would
things.
say, no, totally, totally, totally agree. Yeah, intention,
Yeah.
protection. And when you're starting out with
Hmm.
energy work, I would not start out in the shades of gray. I would really
No.
try to start out with the white light. And then as you
Hmm.
become better at protecting yourself, if you feel called to sort of work with some of that darker energy, then yeah, do whatever you're called to do.
Right.
But as a beginner, I would say don't start looking there. Start with that intention around white light,
Hmm.
and attracting that to you.
And start with somebody that you trust, that has an energy that you vibe with, somebody who you feel
Mhm.
safe with, somebody that you trust. Um, I'll share this story. I worked with somebody. Karina knows who this person is. I thought that this person was, really teaching me some things, and that I was learning these different things. I was ready for these things, and it ended up being a really bad deal, and I didn't see it until it was way late. And so just make sure, if you're starting out, that you're, working with someone, like Karina said, who has a
Mhm.
nice light energy, positive energy, who you trust, who's going to guide you in a positive way. Um, and you can kind of feel that. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
And some of the darker energies, they are sneaky, they are
Hmm.
smart. So
Hmm.
again, it doesn't mean we can't deal with them. Just like, you can go to a really dodgy area of your town at night. but
Mhm.
maybe you want to sort of know what you're doing and feel confident you can defend
Right.
yourself if anything happens before you do
Yeah.
that. And so
Right.
it's
Right.
really similar. It's like you can do whatever you want, but maybe start with like going out when it's light outside to the good areas of your town before you jump right to the darker areas.
Right. Right. And Stasia, we actually already answered this
Wow,
question.
that was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was awesome. Lucid dream for beginners. Looking through the images, I visually fell in love. Any experience with that? With lucid dreaming, have you had any experience with that, Karina?
I have. I I am not a proficient lucid dreamer. When I have
Mhm.
lucid dreamed, it has been unintentionally. I do have some friends who very, very intentionally do it and have their beads
Mhm.
that they run through before going to bed, to kind of get themselves into that state. Um, Everybody is different. So, I'm not saying that, necessarily how I approach it is correct. Um,
Mhm.
like tarot, like astrology, I think lucid dreaming is a tool. Um,
Mhm.
I think sleep is important for us. It is
Mhm.
actually important that unconscious and subconscious thoughts are allowed to rise up during the unconscious, like that period of sleep. Um, so, I would say, if you do feel called to work with lucid dreaming, make sure there's some time where your subconscious can still speak to you. Um,
Mhm.
because there are absolutely crazy things that will come up just in a normal dream that won't come
Right.
up in the same way when we're sort of controlling our experience
Mhm.
a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I think it's a super interesting practice. I've had, a few interesting experiences with it, but it's not something I specifically um, feel called to work with. I do have a lot of crazy, unlucid dreams, and those I find it really interesting to kind of parse through what was my subconscious, my unconscious, my higher self, God, the universe, what were they trying to tell
Mhm.
me through this dream?
Yes, yes. So for people who don't know, do you want to explain what lucid dreaming is?
So lucid dreaming is essentially a process where that you typically approach very intentionally, where you are dreaming when you are within the dream. And there's a whole bunch of really proven practices to do before you go to bed, listening to certain types of music or monologues, fingering beads, all kinds of things to help you get into this state. But it's basically you are in the dream, but you are conscious and you realize that you are in a dream.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely a different brainwave state.
Yes. I have lucid dreamed one time. It was really odd for me. I woke up, I was like, oh, whoa. Usually, what I do before I go to bed is I just say, if there's any messages that
Hmm.
you need to, the universe needs to give me, allow me to remember them. If there's any dreams with anything in there I need to know, allow me to remember those. Otherwise, let me have a good night's sleep. And that's kind of how I approach
Mm,
it.
yeah.
Lucid dreaming, kind of like hypnosis, especially if you're just starting out. I have always been told kind of don't do it alone your first few times,
Hmm.
just because you want to make sure you can, again, control that. Intention is great. Intention is super important. So is protection. But in some situations, you might need somebody there to help guide you back. So if
Mm.
this is something you're just starting out with or you're wanting to experience, find somebody who's reputable to maybe help you with that, so that you can do it properly and have the best experience with it that you can have.
Mhm.
All
I'm
right.
laughing at
Well,
Wally's comment, tapping into my divine feminine tonight, watching Tarot Talk and WNBA at the same time. Love that. Love that for you, Wally.
love it. Yes, that's awesome. That is awesome. Well, do you want to pull a couple of cards real quick before we head out? Looks like we went through all of the questions and we got through everything. Do you want to ask a generic question and we can both pull
Yeah, maybe
from
maybe
that.
even just energy for the month or something that we can all
There you
kind of
go.
best approach the
Yeah.
month with.
Yeah. Let's do that. And then you can see how different Karina and I both read. Okay. Go ahead. You
I
can go.
used I used the Shadowscapes deck since we were showing that one a little bit, and I wanted people to see it a little bit more. I love this card in there, the Queen of Cups, and just
Oh, what a
noticing
beautiful
these
card.
turtles swimming down in the depths, and
Mhm.
noticing the freedom of this figure. You know, she is completely taking up space. Her arms are totally stretched out, and you know, her head is turned towards the side. The cups is the emotional, intuitive suit. So there is this sense of, you know, not just looking at what's right in front of you, but kind of like, what do you notice out of the corner of your eye? What is your intuition and your gut telling you? And the queen, you know, it's so interesting. We've been talking so much about feminine, the divine feminine, you know, energy tonight.
Oh,
And again, this yin idea of being more self aware, more internally reflective. This is something
mhm,
all of us, regardless of, you know, our preferred gender, can do. Because our world is very masculine oriented. It's action,
mhm.
succeed, you know, get more money, get more stuff. And so for all of
Right.
us, it's really good to embrace some of this. Okay, you know, money is good, you know, success might be fine, but what do we really need to feel emotionally connected and emotionally fulfilled? And, you know, so much of the energy I've seen, even in just the last several years, has become more and more that we have a rule book. We're supposed to do these check boxes, buy a house, do these things,
Right.
and that's
Right.
what success looks like. And the Queen of Cups is very much about taking that power back, being
Mhm,
our own authority and our own sort of emotional authority as well. What feels right to someone else may not be what feels resonant with us. And I just love the way this figure looks so empowered, so at home in
mhm,
herself and her energy.
mhm,
Um, and then, you know, with these turtles too, turtles are one of the longest living animals. You know, there are sea turtles that are, oh gosh, I think I saw an article last month about one that was like 120 years old, and they
Yes.
are so long lived. They have
Mhm.
so much wisdom. And one of the amazing things about turtles, I don't know if people have seen sea turtles or land turtles, frankly, for that matter, they do not rush to do
Yeah.
anything. They move so slowly that we even have myths around them, you know, like the tortoise and the hare fable, where it's like they move so slowly. But there
Right.
is this sense of, you know, our world is rush, 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 do things, do more things. And the energy of this card is very much about, what do you want to do? It isn't just
Mhm,
about doing more things. It isn't just about being faster and checking things off of a checklist. You know, this is very much the energy with the sea turtles and with the figure of
mhm,
what is emotionally empowering and satisfying to you, and kind of
mhm.
looking out of that corner of your eye where, you know, you're not just taking what society tells you to do, what maybe even, you know, parents, friends are projecting onto you to do, but you're really looking, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
You know, there's that self-reflection. I love that sense of the corner of the eye. In a lot of old cultures, they
Mhm.
would kind of say you could see fairies or things like that just out of the corner of your eye. And so I love that her
Right.
head is turn to the side in that card, almost like she's looking not at the obvious, but at those little
Mhm.
flashes that you can see just to the side.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I pulled from the back of the deck because I
Ooh.
wanted to, what's the energy we're not seeing? So we got the Knight of Swords. This is traditionally like he is he is a warrior. All right. He is gonna ride in, he is gonna, like cut your head off first and ask questions later, right? And he's not gonna get the answers because he didn't lop your head off. So, do not uh, be very mindful not to rush into something, not to be too sharp, not to be too pointed. Again, swords is that it's represented by air, which is intellectual. So it means things are well thought out. And swords kind of, they get you coming and they get you going, right? So um, be very mindful of the battles that you choose. Don't choose battles that are not important. Be very mindful of what you're doing, of the actions you're taking, the words you're saying, and really just kind of pay attention to it. But when called, absolutely draw the sword, defend yourself, and go through, take the hill when you need to take the hill. But we don't always have to take the hill, right? Not every hill is the
Mm.
battle that we need to fight. So for this month, make sure that you are picking your battles wisely. You're being mindful of what you're saying. You're being, having that intention, that well thought out, think before you speak kind of thing. But also, don't be afraid to defend yourself should the need arise. So
I
yeah.
love that. In both of our cards, there was a sense of discernment and a
Yes.
sense of speed, where it's like go at your own speed and you make
Hmm.
the decision on,
Hmm.
when to use your sword, what is emotionally fulfilling to you. So,
Right.
yeah, interesting common thread through those.
Right, right. And see, and that shows too, you can have two very different cards, but again, they combine that story, and that's how tarot
Mhm.
works, is because you might individually look at all of these cards and go, how do you get something like this? And I think that we have planned to do a live tarot reading, and we are going to do that. We've got some, questions that we are going to ask. And, for those of you who've not ever experienced a tarot reading, you can come check that out with us. I'll let you know when that is for sure. Um, but yeah, so you got a chance to kind of see two different energies of how to read. And you guys, this was so much fun. Karina, we always are on
Mhm.
here for so
Yes,
long. There's
yeah, I
so
know.
much
So
to
much to
talk
talk
about.
about.
We get so
And there were
passionate.
really great questions too. I really appreciate the depth and vulnerability and honesty that everybody brought to those questions. It just enhanced the
Yes.
conversation so much.
Yes. That was my husband calling. I'm sure he's calling to tell me he is headed to bed. So, Stasia, I'm going to have you take us out. Everybody, thank you so much for being a part of the
Thank you.
conversation. If he wasn't in El Paso, I wouldn't rush out of here. Normally, I don't. Karina, thank you so much.
Thank
You
you.
guys
Thank
have an
you.
amazing night. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of the conversation.